Hope everyone's doing well. It's coming up to Christmas. I might not make another video before then, so hopefully everyone has a wonderful time with their family and friends and enjoys it. I want to make a video today. Really, I'm just going to ramble. The main subject that I want to talk about is perception, but I seem to be sort of thinking about this quite a lot but never actually pressing record on the camera, so I'm just going to talk and see what comes out. Hopefully it's useful and you guys enjoy it or find it beneficial. If not, it's food for thought. And I think that perception is really important, and in part of our journey here, I think that perception is key, because we need to understand that our experience, our journey here is about perception, and that we need to respect our own perception, and also we need to respect that of others, because they are actually all equally valid. And while I was in Ohio, I had a moment, and we were in Ohio, we were visiting Serpent Mound, and we were all standing outside the hut that we had, and we were having a campfire, and there was loads and loads of people that I'd met that day for the first time. I'd been in contact with some of these people over the internet, but I'd never met them in person, and there was lots of new people that I met that day, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And we spent a couple of hours, everyone was talking, and this person was talking to that person, I was talking to this person about this, and everyone was just mingling, very much a party atmosphere. And what sort of struck me was that everyone had their own perception. You know, some people were interested in Buddhism, some people were talking about physics, some people were talking about extraterrestrials, some people were talking about angels and fairies, but what everyone seemed to have was everyone knew that there was one point at the centre of it, and that was what united us, was in spite of the fact that we all had totally different perceptives and different viewpoints on it, everyone really understood that it was the same thing we were all looking at, in spite of how we'd chosen to experience or how we'd chosen to study it or where we were viewing it from. We all realised we were looking at the same thing, and that really hit home when we were all standing around the campfire, and everyone was standing around the campfire in a circle, and some people were standing closer to the fire and some people were standing further away, and everyone was talking and having conversations amongst themselves. And it just hit home is that in spite of the fact that everyone had their own, I like to call it, flavour of ascension, everyone was talking about the same thing, in the same way that although we were all standing at different angles around the fire, and the fire would look different from every single one of those angles, we all still knew we were looking at a fire. And I think that is the one thing that unites us, is that we do understand, you know, particularly guys on Team Light or anyone really that watches my videos, is that we are all talking about one same thing. And this was something that I'd experienced before that moment, really looking into old religions and practices and ancient history, is that fundamentally they were all talking about the same thing. They all, you know, looked at gods, they all saw us as eternal souls, and they all talking about the same thing. They just were explaining it from their perspective. And you know, Alan and I went to Avebury, and we saw, just by pure chance we were there, and it was I think it would have been the winter solstice, and there was some druids there, and they asked us if we wanted to join in their ceremony. And as they were going through it, what I couldn't help but notice was that it was exactly the same as the Mayan ceremony I'd done on Mount Chester, you know, except for the fact that they used different names. They saluted and invited in the four elements. You know, it was in the sort of Mayan stuff, it was, you know, hello father son. In the druid stuff, it was hail to the north. But they were all stood in a circle, they all invited the four elements in, and it was fundamentally the same ceremony. It was just that they'd chosen to give it different names. It's almost like using different languages. And a lot of that we've got to really acknowledge is going to be around to environmental influences. So you know, another interesting way of this has reflected itself in history and throughout religions and beliefs is, say for example, the zodiac. and birth signs, and how people are meant to be defined as characters by when they were born, and how the planetary system was there. Now, a lot of cultures have used the stars. So, for example, I am a Scorpio, and they use that characteristic to explain, how my personality will be defined. And I know there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the fundamentals of it. Now, Celtics or Druids do the same thing, but they use trees. Now, if we're going to go back, if we're looking at, say, for example, an Egyptian society where you've got high pressure, clear skies, and you can see the stars beautifully, and you're in almost a sort of, I don't think Egypt was barren back in the day, but it wouldn't have been as lush with trees as it is here, because the Druids, whereas they probably had cloudy skies and weren't able to study the stars in such details, they used trees. So although I might be a Scorpio in the zodiac sign, I'm actually Yasmin in the Druid tree astronomy. And it's the same principle. And what they've really done is taken that archetype of, say, Scorpio, and instead of comparing that archetype, so that character, to the stars and using a reference in the heavens, they just said, well, how is that archetype, how is that perspective reflected in trees? And they identified that the same characteristics that would be aligned with a Scorpio were what they associated with the Yasmin tree. And they've done it for all of them, actually, and I'll stick a link in there, but it isn't about that being a better way or a worse way. It's actually just the same thing. And everyone has got their own perspective. Every single person on this planet has got their own perspective, and they're meant to have. You're not meant to, feel free to do whatever you want, that's the whole point of what I'm saying, but, from my own point of view, it doesn't seem right to me to say that my perspective is any more valid than anyone else's, or any less valid than anyone else's, or to try and enforce my perspective on someone else's, or to try and take on someone else's perspective for my own. Because if we take the idea that we are all one part of one infinite consciousness, and that I am incarnate in this vessel in order to experience that consciousness from my perspective, and that if we want to look at source consciousness, it's incarnated itself in billions of different ways on this planet to explore itself from billions of different angles. So, for example, for me to say that everyone watching this video should totally and wholly agree with me, and that they should view things in the same way that I view things, that would almost be saying, well, in spite of the fact that you've incarnated here to experience things, to experience this journey, to experience the process of evolution, that's why time was created, but to experience this, but you shouldn't do it from your own perspective, you should do it from mine. Well, why would you want to duplicate my work? At the same time, if I was looking up to anyone and saying, well, that's their ideal, they've got some great answers, I should try and view things through their eyes. Well, no, I shouldn't. I should maintain my perspective, because that's what I'm here to do. And what that really means is that we should appreciate our own unique beauty, and what makes us unique ultimately is our imperfections. If we were all perfect, then we would all have a perfect perspective. But we haven't. We're all standing around the fire, we're all looking at it from different angles. Some people don't know they're standing around a fire, but their perspective, their experiences are equally valid, and I just feel that we should respect that. We should try and share our perspective, because we are here to understand what it looks like from, again, in my opinion, I feel that we are here to understand what it looks like from every angle, and personally I really, really like doing that, but I will still maintain my own perspective. So I'd like to hear what someone else thinks on the same thing. Now, I might not entirely agree with that. Personally, what I try to do is look for commonalities. What is it that I believe to be true, or I hold as one of my truths, that they also hold as one of their truths? Because chances are it is true. And we all learn, we all grow. Things that I believe now, I didn't believe a year ago. Things I believed a year ago, I don't believe now. But I believe that I was I had the perfect perspective at those times. And I think that that is ultimately, you know, really, really important, that we should respect other people's perspectives. I really don't like to see, you know, anyone bad-mouthing, oh, that's rubbish, trying to undermine someone else's truth. If you don't agree with someone else's truth, share your own. You know, I really think that that's really quite important, is, you know, just to share your truth, not to undermine anyone else's, because their truth is true. No one ever thinks they're wrong. Anyone that ever thinks they're wrong, to be perfectly honest, is an idiot. Because if you think you're wrong, why do you think that? Now, ultimately, I could have an opinion. Tomorrow I could change that opinion. At which point, when I change that opinion will no longer be my own. Therefore, it won't be in my opinion. It will be an opinion that I held previously that I've decided to change my mind on. So everyone always thinks they're wrong, and if you think everyone always thinks they're right, but if you think you're wrong and you still hold that opinion, then you're creating a belief system that's limiting yourself, and that can be quite a damaging thing to do. Anyway, I'm going to try and tag on some photos that I've taken today, because I don't want to make them on video on their own, but I want to give you a little bit of an insight as to what it was I was doing. But